don't understand about the D-Notice Committee in the UK, which can put major issues of public importance behind in a national security lockbox. And the D-Notice Committee includes many journalists, including editors of The Guardian and Huffington Post UK, publications like that. So it's just a very, it's one of the most corrupt media environments on the planet. I guess it's a badge of honor, honestly, to be deemed not fit and proper for this bogus union.
I think that's right. And one of the most famous examples of the use of the D-Notice Committee was, of course, the famous case of the Skripals, who were allegedly poisoned with Novichok, and they lived in Salisbury, very close to the house of their MI6 handler, Pablo Miller, and Pablo Miller was in there in was with them in ZZ's restaurant just before they fell ill. And of course, the official story, which is unbelievable, is that they touched the Novichok on their door handle. Then they went shopping. Then they went to a restaurant and ate 3-course meal. And then only after that did they both simultaneously and instantaneously pass out from Novichok. So they were both too sick instantaneously for either of them to call for help. It's plainly a complete and utter nonsense. The stuff, if they had been poisoned with Novichok, it certainly doesn't take 4 hours to take effect and then knock you out instantly. That's just ludicrous. And the other thing, of course, is that the first person on the scene just happened by chance to be the chief nurse of the British Army, which I thought was lovely. But
just happened to be walking by when they passed out on a park bench.
Exactly. She just happened to be shopping, in fact, and just walked by. There you are. That genuinely is the official story. But the D-Notice Committee put out a D-Notice on Pablo Miller, saying that nobody was to publish his name or mention him at all, even though they had been having lunch with an MI6 agent. And the interesting thing on this is that in the public inquiry into it, which was being held this week, evidence was given by the police, which gave the evidence of the doctor who questioned Julia Skripal when she first became conscious again. And she replied to him by blinking her eyes once or twice for yes or no. And he asked her where she was sprayed. The doctor believed, I don't know why the doctor believed she had been sprayed with the poison. That's what the doctor believed he had happened. I assume he had a reason for believing that. So he asked her whether she had been sprayed with the poison, and she responded yes. And then he asked her where she had been sprayed with the poison, and she answered yes on ZZ's restaurant. And he asked her again, and she answered yes again, that she had been sprayed with poison in ZZ's restaurant, which of course makes much more sense because they staggered out of the restaurant and collapsed. That's much more likely than they touched it 4 hours earlier. But the person who was in ZZ's restaurant with them was Pablo Miller.
Wow.
Where they were sprayed with poison. Now, the evidence was that all that evidence was given in public, and it was then ruled out of order by the judge heading the inquiry as being hearsay. Even though they had the doctor's transcript of it, they had the written transcript of it the doctor made at the time was submitted, but it was decided that was hearsay, and so that is not admitted as evidence in the inquiry, but everybody saw it and heard it. So there you are. You have Pablo Miller, who doesn't exist, and no media ever publishes his name. They're not allowed to publish his name because there's a D-Notice. He was with them when they were sprayed with Novichok, and I'm as you know, I'm not going to make any inferences for matters to who sprayed them with the Novichok, but I think there's one. Assuming it was Novichok, who sprayed them with whatever they were sprayed with. But the most obvious suspect seems to be not to be two Russian agents.
Which I mean, which is amazing. Pablo Miller also, I think, was at Orbis Communications with Christopher Steele. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So for those of you just joining us, Aaron Mate has not morphed into a seasoned Englishman. We're speaking to Ambassador Craig Murray, who is live from Beirut. We've discussed the situation in Lebanon, and now we're on to another issue that Craig has covered in detail, to the chagrin and anger of the British national security state, which is the Skripal poisoning incident, which was really critical, I think, to deepening the new Cold War with Russia. It was such an important incident, and also bringing Britain into Russiagate and activating Britain as a player in the war against Russia. So there's this Dawn Sturgess inquiry taking place. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
So who is Dawn Sturgess? And I guess if anyone wants any background on this, go to our YouTube channel at the Grayzone and watch my previous interview with Craig Murray, because he gives the full background on Skripal. But who is Dawn Sturgess, and why does this inquiry matter, and where will it lead?
Dawn Sturgess was an unfortunate lady who died of poisoning, unlike the Skripals. And the official story is this. The official story is that these Russian agents poisoned the Skripals by painting Novichok on their door handle, even though, as I just said, Yulia herself said that they were sprayed with, or indicated that they were sprayed with Novichok in the restaurant some hours later. And the official story is that the Novichok was in a perfume bottle, which the Russian agents then disposed of in a charity bin. And that 3 to 4 months later, a friend of Dawn Sturgess, named Charlie Rowley, stole the perfume from within the charity bin, and gave it to Dawn as a present. She then sprayed it on herself and died. He also sprayed it on himself, Charlie Rowley, but didn't die. Again, there are some severe problems with this narrative, of which the most important one is that the Russian agents allegedly, because Charlie Rowley stated that when he got the perfume bottle, it was sealed. The cellophane around the box was sealed. He had to unseal it all and open it up. So according to the official story, having sprayed Novichok on the door handle, the Russian agents somehow in the street got all the bottle back together again and resealed the cellophane, and then dropped it in. Why? And then dropped it. How and why? And then dropped it in this charity box. And this charity box, it's a charity collection bin. It was emptied on a regular basis. It was emptied approximately weekly. Yes.
Watch this. This is interesting footage here from the inquiry. So the person is always in the background, and he starts kind of cracking a smile when they're told that the Russians brought a portable heat sealer with them to Salisbury.
That they used it. I believe they dismantled it. I believe they placed it into the plastic packaging, and then using a portable heat sealer, sealed some of the component parts of the device into plastic packaging, which then went into the box.
It's not. And the whole. We're told that this, a drop, one minuscule drop of this substance would kill you. They're supposed to have painted the door handle with a perfume bottle, from a perfume bottle with this substance, while not wearing any protective clothing at all. They're spraying it on, and one drop kills you. and they're not wearing any protective clothing of any kind, which seems to me wildly improbable. And then they're replacing the perfume bottle in the street. They don't go anywhere. They're not going into a house or into a premise. In the street somehow, they get the perfume bottle all back in the box, and then reseal the cellophane with a portable heat sealer, and then throw it in the charity bin. Why would you reseal it? Why would you carry it with you? Where are you carrying this portable heat sealer? And what is its energy source? What is a portable heat sealer? Have you ever seen a portable heat sealer for refilling cellophane on perfume bottles? Is there actually such a thing? Anyway, obviously the Russian Secret Service have invented a portable heat sealer for perfume bottles, and they carried it with them and did this.
Portable
But
heat
then,
sealer.
of course, poor Dawn Sturgess died, and she wasn't given an inquest, needless to say, a bit like David Kelly. There's instead this public inquiry, which is a farce, because, as I say, all the key evidence gets ruled out as hearsay and not important. And the whole thing is a charade to... that's why it's a public inquiry instead of a proper coroner's inquest. It's a charade to reinforce the anti-Russian propaganda. And none of the media calls out the obvious rubbish. There are bits of this story which are just so obviously untrue that people should be falling over laughing at them, as that guy was in the inquiry. But everybody just goes along with the charade. And you're right, that just goes... There couldn't be a more telling commentary on Britain's so-called journalists, that nobody has called this out.
No, none of them asked questions. They didn't ask questions about Duma. They didn't ask questions about Skripal. You're not allowed to ask questions because then you're accused of echoing Russian propaganda and you're out of a job. But this one deserved so many questions. I mean, why did the pets have to be killed of Yulia Skripal? If she was sprayed in a restaurant, then would an autopsy of the pets not have shown that they were not affected by Novichok at all, which was supposedly placed on their doorknob? Why did they have to be killed and then disappeared? I mean, that seemed to be a pretty big red flag, and no one in the media asked about it. Why were the ducks poisoned? How were these ducks poisoned? And Gina Haspel, then CIA director, was running around showing pictures of dead ducks to Donald Trump to get him to authorize more sanctions on Russia and cancel meetings with Putin. I mean, it all seemed pretty obvious what was going on here, but you were one of the few people asking questions and you wound up in jail. I mean, you were targeted.
Oh, very much so. I was actually targeted for... I was actually jailed officially for contempt of court in another case.
Yeah, but I mean, it all folded into that case. They were looking for
it was all
an opening.
Exactly. And the Skripals.
So what, jigsaw identification? You identified a witness who had already been identified by the press. I mean, it was obvious that they were just looking for something they could finagle into a prosecution because you had upset them.
Yeah, that's right. I upset them greatly over the Skripal thing, and of course over Julian Assange. In fact, I'm just generally not one of their favourite people.
Yeah,
they were quite keen to get me. But no, it's very sad. The media landscape in the UK is very sad. We lost John Pilger recently, of course, and John hadn't been able to get onto mainstream television for 15 years or so, despite the fact he was still making great documentaries and was arguably the greatest documentary maker of the last century. And there's just nobody replacing him. There is nobody making documentaries which challenge the official line rather than reinforce the official line. If you wanted to make a documentary that challenged the official line, you would never ever get funding. You'd never get commissioned. It's just not possible to do it within the mainstream media nowadays.
Well, in the mainstream media, but I should note that we have more viewers right now on this stream than MSNBC has in the United States. I'm not even exaggerating. The mainstream media is in a state of collapse. And it's another reason why they're passing these new laws to clamp down on all speech they can't control. Because as John Kerry said while practically sitting in Klaus Schwab's lap in Davos, it's harder to enforce consensus and make policy based on that consensus than ever before because of social and alternative media. So we are going to face a blitzkrieg of censorship from the exponents of a failing corporate media.
Yeah. There's a new Online Security Act. Of course, all these things are always security.
Yeah.
And it's always to protect you from paedophilia. That's always the rationale for controls on the internet. Starmer has already said that they're going to introduce a clause into the new Online Safety Act to make the spreading of misinformation or disinformation illegal. So the government's going to decide, what's true and what's not true. And if they believe that you're spreading disinformation, for example, just exactly the kind of thing we've just been saying about the Skripal case, is going to become illegal. It's going to become illegal to challenge the government narrative. And I fear we really are heading into that kind of dystopia, possibly faster in the UK than you are in the US, but I think you're heading in the same direction as well.